presenter is Frank Romano. RIT Professor Emeritus Frank Romano's career has spanned 56 years in the printing and publishing industries. Many know him as the editor of the International Paper Pocket Pal for over 30 years, or have read one of the thousands of articles he has written. He has edited newsletters for EDSF and PIA and was the founder of the Digital Printing Council. He was the editor and publisher of TypeWorld and later Electronic Publishing Magazine, plus Computer Artist and Color Publishing magazines. He's the author of 56 books, including the 10,000-term Encyclopedia of Graphic Communications with Richard Romano, the standard reference in the field. His books were among the first on digital printing, computer-to-plate, workflow, PDF, Quark Express, InDesign, and new media. His latest book includes a 400-plus page history of the Linotype Company and history of the photo typesetting era. He is credited with coining the term variable data printing. He lectures extensively around the world and was the principal researcher on the landmark EDSF study, Printing in the Age of the Web and Beyond. He has been quoted in many newspapers and publications, as well as on the TV and radio. He appeared on the History Detectives PBS program and serves as president of the Museum of Printing in North Andover, Massachusetts. He has been an expert witness in legal cases involving patents and forgery, most recently a case involving Facebook. He spent 20 years in full-time teaching at RIT and 11 years as an adjunct professor for RIT and Cal Poly. He does not consult for suppliers, but has consulted for hundreds of print users from the United Nations and government agencies to insurance companies and publishers. He collects books on printing and has a library of over 4,000 volumes. Frank, thank you for sharing with us your knowledge of the print industry. Our audience is all yours.
Well, now we have no time for any presentation because that introduction just took up everything. Hello, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me out there. What we're going to try to do is I'm going to talk about how the world has changed and then talk about what's new, what has really come into the forefront of the industry over the last few years. We're back from the Graph Expo show in Chicago, so that's a good indicator of what's going on and what's changing in the industry. So hopefully you can all see the slides. And of course, they're recording this, so you'll all be able to go back to this if you so desire and be bored again. So I'm going to talk about trends. I'm going to do an update on recent new products, what was important at Graph Expo, probably what's not, and even some directions and futures as we go into the go ahead. Now, the three major changes that have taken place in the printing industry over the last decade or more. One, from analog to digital print. So we've gone from printing presses with printing plates to using toner and inkjet and dots to make our images. We've gone from black and white to color. It was a monumental change. So now virtually impossible to pick up anything that's not in full color. And of course, we've gone from physical to electronic with e-books and e-blogs and the web and all the things that allow us to handle information electronically. Those are three major changes, and each has taken its toll on our technology and our use of information. Now, this, of all the ads I do, of all the things I do, this ad really sums up the changes very quickly. This is an ad for Radio Shack. Remember them? From 1991. Now, first of all, here's what they were promoting. An AM/FM radio for $13.85. I can do that on my iPhone right now with Pandora or whatever. An in-ear stereo phone, $7.88. I can do that with my iPhone. A calculator, I do that with my iPhone. A Tandy 1000 for games and word processing, I do that on my iPhone. A VHS camcorder, I do that on my iPhone. A cellular telephone, oh my God, that is my iPhone. A mobile CV, so I can talk to truck drivers. I love that the ad says you'll never drive alone. Yeah, you can talk to truck drivers. I do that on my iPhone. A 20 memory speed dial. All right, I got that on there. A portable CD player. Well, I've got all my music on there as well. A 10-channel desktop scanner. Well, I don't listen to police broadband, but I could. A phone answering machine. Yep, my phone takes messages. A tape recorder. Yep, I can record all that. Everything that this ad promoted, everything that this ad was promoting at that time in 1991, I can do on my iPhone. Think how the world has changed. And by the way, think how Radio Shack has changed. One of my favorite parts of this ad, though, is at the bottom of the ad, it says, check your phone book for the Radio Shack store nearest you. What's a phone book? Where do you find one? So monumental, almost seismic changes in a very short period of time. This view is so typical of the world that I see out there. We are multitaskers. You know, there's something called the Nielsen Ratings, where they try to come up with how much television shows are being watched. And so in about 8,000 homes in America, they put this set-top box, and it records what you're watching at the time. And all that data is accumulated, and every morning the TV executives get a report on what shows people are watching. And that determines what shows are going to be on and when they're going to be on and what you're going to see. Well, think about this. Almost no one today does only one media thing at a time. If you're watching television, you're probably on the phone at the same time, or surfing the web, or texting a friend, or reading a magazine, or listening to music. It is within this new world order that we have to figure out where print plays a role. It's not just reading a magazine. What other applications are there for print to get your attention in this multimedia, multi-channel world? Because it's not easy anymore. So I've got to figure out then how to use social media, how to use the web, how to use all these new tools as well as traditional print. Now, what happened is a very strange story. In 1995, the world changed. That's when the internet truly came of age, when the first browser was introduced, originally called Mosaic, then called Netscape Navigator. And so within a few years, virtually half of everything that we printed went electronic. Again, PDF files. We move about 1 trillion PDF files around the internet every week or so. Think about that. That would have been paper at one point in time. Some print goes offshore. We print it overseas. So what's left, which is about a little under half of what we used to print, is still on paper. Now, we probably leveled off. There's not too much more that's going to go into electronic form. So this will probably be the size of the printing industry going forward with this volume of material. But there will still be this conflict with the digital side and how we handle all of it. And it's, as you can imagine, if you lose half the volume of print, you lose half the revenue of the industry. So printers don't have that much to sell. So as a result, the revenue numbers have gone down. And as you can see, the big the big drop there was from 2006, 2007 to 2010. That was, you had all kinds of issues with the economy going on at that point in time. But you can see then as we go forward to 2024, it's sort of, was that 2014 is where I ended it at this one. It's sort of leveled out. Well, you'll see later on, it stays that way. We are relatively level, that if we kind of stay level, we're probably okay. We don't see any severe drops coming in the printing industry over the next decades. Because really, this is an InfoTrends chart, and they do a great job comparing what's happening to the general economy to what happens in the printing industry. And this is the U.S. economy, and what you're seeing there, the gray bars, are the recessions that we've had. They've come a little bit too fast over the last few years. But you can see the general economy itself has had its issues. But again, since 2009, it's not done that badly, although a little drop in 12 and 13, but we're up in 14, 15, 16 at this stage of the game. So literally what everyone is saying is that flat is the new up. If we can just stay level, we're probably going to be okay. Although some people are actually even more optimistic that we could grow at 1 or 2% per year, and that's entirely possible at this stage. Now, one of the ways you can gauge what's happening in the printing industry is revenue per printer. And you can see if you go back to 1992, we had about 44,000 establishments. And revenue per, well, let me get this right. Yeah, sales per establishment is the yellow number. You can see there. Yeah. but the number of printers, the sales per establishment was relatively low. But now if you look at what's happening, there are fewer printers, but the sales per establishment has gone up. Now, why is that? That's because of automation. A lot of that came with digital printing. Some of it came with the offset press. So 1993, automatic plate loading, then we had automatic densitometry, video systems on presses, direct drive motors. All of those things enhanced the automation of the printing press. But digital printing went even farther. You could send a file to it, and it would do everything after that for you, and you could even integrate the finishing and bindery in some way, shape, or form. That was a phenomenal advantage at that point. And so as a result, revenue per establishment continues to climb. So the printers who remain in business are doing relatively well. They're skittish, of course, because they don't know what's going to happen next, but they're doing okay as of now. And again, whenever I read about what's happening in the printing industry, it's mergers and acquisitions. It has nothing to do with companies going out of business. You don't see those kinds of filings anymore. So there have been some major acquisitions. Donnelly, of course, acquiring Courier Corp this year, now splitting into 3 major companies. But acquisitions and mergers are the way that the printing industry is sort of holding its own at this stage of the game. So what are the challenges affecting print? Well, postal rates, that's the first and biggest one. It used to be that it cost more to print a piece than mail it. Now it costs more to mail than it costs to print. That's a major change. So companies think twice about using direct mail, where actually direct mail is a bargain in terms of its response rate, whereas if you use the internet, the response rates are very low. Government policies are another problem. I mean, the day that SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, created EDGAR and allowed companies to file their annual reports electronically, the printed annual report literally went away. Now the Federal Drug Administration wants to make it so those little white instruction pages in your medication, you can download them from the internet rather than have them printed in the box. Now some of them are very interesting. I was on a medication earlier this year, and it said one of the side effects was death. I didn't know death was a side effect. But the fact is I read it in this little sheet. Oh, I have to admit it was 4-point type, but hard to read. But I'm not sure that everyone will have access to that information if it is now put in electronic form. Misguided tree lovers. Now, I love the environment like everyone else, and I want to protect trees as much as everyone else, but we should know that there are more trees on this planet than there were at the turn of the last century. We should know that harvesting trees is very specific. They go into a forest and they pick out specific trees for wood and fiber and whatever. They do not level an entire forest. Forestry today is a science. It is done very, very well. We use more of the tree for lumber than we use it for pulp. So saying that somehow we should send our email as a way of saving paper is a mistake. In fact, it costs more in terms of energy and coal and the environment to keep the internet lit up for 1 second than it does to send pages by direct mail. Internet publishing. Yes, e-books have grown, but now we're discovering that people don't want e-books. They only want them at certain times. They want a printed book because they can save it. Are you going to wait for the limited edition PDF? Are you going to pass that down to your children? They realize now that the printed book is something you can save and use and reread and go and use again. Online print services. These organizations have done a phenomenal job. I mean, buying 500 business cards for $10, not something you could do in the past. But they've replaced a lot of the small printers. You buy online. They ship it to you by FedEx or UPS or whatever. And of course, multi-channel marketing. The fact that we don't use one medium. We're not print-based anymore. We're web-based. We're Facebook-based. We're Twitter-based. We're using all different media all the time. Just watch, go into any major city, anywhere, with a whole bunch of people walking around, and just watch them and see the number that have their cell phones to their ears or are staring at them. By the way, they're oblivious to traffic. They're oblivious to everything else going on. And you go, it's all mobile computing right now. I mean, the new iPhones are phenomenal. I mean, do they have to do them every year? But that's the world that we're in right now. And think about the number of people that have cell phones on this planet. It's mind-boggling. Will everyone have a cell phone? Well, you know, I watch on television the terrible things that are happening in Europe with all of the immigrants coming from the Near East and Northern Africa. And did you notice when you watch them that almost all of them have cell phones? So it's amazing. Almost everybody is communicating in some way, shape, or form. So I believe that technology creates markets. Wherever something new comes along, it creates a new way of doing things and creates new opportunities for making money. So I look for them. Let's look at the ones in the past. This is one of my favorites. This is the original IBM 914 copying machine, 1960. I was the first key operator on the first of these machines in Brooklyn, New York. It came with a fire extinguisher because every now and then it would burst into flames. Xerox said that was a feature. But the thing is, within a few years, this became the mainstay of the small, quick printing establishment. Copy shops started up overnight. And once they got into copying, customers wanted longer runs. And once they wanted longer runs, then they bought small presses. And then they wanted, customers wanted color, so they bought color presses. So you start with one machine that looks innocuous, doesn't have the quality, doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the performance, but it establishes a market. And when that market is established, it goes on. In 1981, the Canon LBPCX, I know they have a way with names over there. This was a little 8-page-a-minute machine at 300 DPI. Well, you don't know it as that name. You know it as the Apple Laser Writer. You know it as the Hewlett-Packard LaserJet. You know it under a dozen different names because Canon OEM'd it to many other companies who integrated it with their own controllers. This established the desktop printing revolution, if you will. It was 300 DPI, but it was so-called good enough. I hated that term at the time and still do, but that was the way we described what these machines could do. 1991. Now, think about how digital printing changed the world with the Xerox Docutech and other black and white machines of their ilk. These machines were fantastic. They were high speed. They took digital files, or analog files too, for that matter. They could bind the book at the very end. It opened up the market for personalized manuals. Now, the Docutech, I have to admit, did a phenomenal job, but it actually created and destroyed its own market at the same time. Why was that? Well, in order to get the best pricing plans, people would commit to the higher and higher volumes, where they would do more and more copies per month. And in order to do that, they had to keep that volume up, because under many of these contracts, you get penalized if you go under, you get penalized if you go over. So what would happen is they would discount significantly in order to have that volume up there. As a result, competition became so fierce, almost no one was making money toward the end of the Docutech reign. When they finally changed to a different version of the machine that was higher quality and did more, I think it did better, but by then color was coming in very quickly, and that changed everything. But again, you have to be very careful with technology to make sure that the way it is sold gives you an ability to make money with it. Otherwise, it has no application at all. Now, Inkjet is sort of the hottest thing going out there right now. Remember now, the black and white toner machines went to color. You saw them in 1993 with the Indigo, the Zycon, then Xerox entered the market, then Canon entered the marketplace. By the 1990s, the late 1990s, Inkjet was coming in unbelievably fast. The first machine, I think 95 or 96, was shown at the Siebold Conference in California from Epson, and it was a 24-inch printer that could be used for proofing, color proofing. And then they went to 36 inches, and then to 48 inches, and then 60 inches. Then they went roll-fed, high-speed roll-fed, then sheet-fed. I mean, at the Graph Expo show in Chicago, that was the hottest area of all, of every kind of inkjet machine you could imagine. Now, sheet-fed is growing very rapidly, but still hasn't established its base. The roll-fed machines have done very well. Canon, Xerox, Fuji, many other companies have moved into this marketplace aggressively and have done a wonderful job. Many of them are developing sheet-fed versions of the machine. Now, why are they doing that? Because there's a need for both kinds. The roll-fed gives you the speed and the volume. The sheet-fed gives you the ability to change jobs very quickly based upon the stock. Because we change paper. Customers want different papers for different things. Just look at the way, go into a printing company and look at all the paper they have in inventory or left over from other jobs, and you get some idea. So that's why we need both kinds, roll-fed and sheet-fed on inkjet. Now, coming up next year is the big Drupa show not in Chicago, it's in Germany. Don't go to Chicago for Drupa. That's where you will see the next generation of inkjet machines. That will be, I think, the show that turns the whole market on its side and changes the direction of our technology. Now, the cut sheet or sheet-fed machines and the continuous feed inkjet machines have only a very small area of overlap, which InfoTrends calls the zone of disruption, with certain companies coming into those markets, like the Xerox Rialto, the Delphax Elon, the Canon Niagara, which is now called the i300, I think. And even the HP Indigo, the big machines, the 10,000. These machines are fascinating in what they do. In terms of volume, quality, capability, they are fantastic. So what I am predicting is that we're all going to wind up with a blend of machines. We're going to have continuous inkjet for high volume, high speed requirements, and we're going to have cut sheet for other requirements like job work and commercial work. That's going to be the way we go. I don't see that we're going to have one machine that will do everything. Now, yes, you could be an organization that only does transaction printing, and continuous feed would probably do the job for you. But I think for a commercial operation, you're probably going to wind up with a multiplicity of machines. And by the way, you could even wind up with a few toner machines, because they will do the job as well for certain things. So if you looked at the floor of the show, that's me kissing a printing press, by the way, don't ask. The major exhibitors are in black there, and you can see who the big exhibitors were. Look now, EFI, HP, Xerox, Canon, Konica, Rico. Think about this for a second. They're digital printing companies. They're not the traditional Heidelbergs, Manrolans, KBAs. It's a phenomenal shift in who exhibited at trade shows. It was a very good show. It was robust. It was well attended. But the whole tenor of the show has shifted from an offset orientation to a digital printing orientation. Now, this means then that it conflicts with the SGIA show coming up in Atlanta very shortly, I think beginning of November, where they roll-fed inkjet has been the mainstay of that show. So that show is mostly for signage and specialty applications, replacing a lot of screen printing, whereas the Graph Expo show is more for the commercial printing market. The overlap, though, is significant. When you look in those booths, what you discover is Canon had a lot of their roll-fed inkjet. EFI had all their Vuetex stuff, which is roll-fed and flatbed inkjet. HP, of course, a major supplier in that marketplace. So all of these companies were in those markets as well. So now the overlap of shows and exhibitors is getting severe in many cases. We're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. There was only one offset press, that's why I kissed it, but everything was inkjet, inkjet, inkjet. And here are the companies, by the way, in order so you get an idea. Pitney Bowes was there mostly with their digital printing equipment and some of their mailing stuff. Standard, because I believe if we ever have one last printing show on Earth,
The last exhibitor will be a company that does binder equipment, because no matter what you use to print, you're going to have to finish that product in some way. And so there will be a bindery company there. Kodak was there, by the way, with not as much of their digital stuff. They were actually promoting, believe it or not, printing plates. Well, why? Well, printing plate volume is up. Now, you would think that's counterintuitive when you consider the fact that digital printing is usurping a good portion of the volume for offset. Well, with shorter and shorter runs on offset presses, people have to use more plates. If they use more plates, then plate volume goes up. So Kodak, Fuji, and Agfa are doing phenomenally well right now in the plate business. But we all know that at some point in time, as we move into the future, we're going to erode more and more of the volume of offset. It will be really for mostly longer runs. As digital quality gets better and capability gets better, we will see more and more material moving into inkjet and toner. That means then plate volumes will go down. And companies that are supporting themselves with analog volumes right now are in for a rude awakening. So what were the hot products? There it is, the Canon I300. The code name was Niagara. It's a 14-inch by 20-inch sheet-fed machine, high quality, beautiful device. Ready for this? It's inkjet. The Xerox iGen 5, I love it. They added a 5th station into it. So it's CMYK plus a 5th color, and that can be one of 3 different toners, which increases the color gamut to the point where you can now do more of the Pantone colors, although they just expanded the range of Pantone colors, so you can't win no matter what happens. The Xerox Rialto is an inkjet machine. It's roll-fed. It's all enclosed in one device, prints on both sides of the paper, comes out, and then sheets the material as it comes through. It was part of the Impika acquisition that Xerox made a few years ago. Scodix is the company from Israel that deposits multiple levels of polymer to give you texture on paper. It's the most phenomenal device and does a beautiful job. It adds quality like embossing that you have never seen before. It can also print metallics and glitter and do varnishing. It's just unbelievable. And now what we're discovering is if you add value to a printed piece, people will pay you more for it. And that's where the money is. MGI has a line of equipment that is very similar, does some of what Scodix does. In addition, MGI has digital printers that can put books together and bind them, as well as do sheet-fed digital printing. The Indigo 30,000, they're running out of numbers, by the way, so now we're into 5 digits. The 30,000, there are 3 in that series. These are the big machines that are 4-up devices, the 10,000, the 20,000, and the 30,000. The 30,000 is designed more for the packaging side of the industry. Now that's the next big thing, is packaging. All the manufacturers are really pointing us in the direction of package printing. And the reason is packaging has no electronic competitor. Therefore, if you're in packaging, you're relatively immune from that job being lost to electronic dissemination. However, the problem is if every commercial printer in the United States got involved in packaging, competing with the companies that are already in packaging, it would be chaos to begin with. No one would make any money at all. So you have to really pick your niche. What do you want to do? Folding carton. Many of the newer offset presses being sold all have the ability to shift from folding carton weight paper to plain paper so that you can handle almost any kind of job. If you want to do flexible packaging, well, right now flexography is the only intelligent way, although there are lots of things happening with digital printing being applied to flexible packaging. That's a major part of the packaging industry and relatively unaffected by digital technology at this stage of the game, although digital heads have been put in line with Flexo units. Gravure, well, KBA has partnered on a press that can print gravure liners, so you can then mount them on corrugated and other materials for heavyweight packaging. So if you're going to do anything with packaging, pick your niche very carefully, because not every packaging market is open to everyone. Now, the thing that's going to change that marketplace is, you know, labels are a big market, and HP has done a phenomenal job in the label market. In fact, there are now 32 different digital printers for printing labels in full color. Now, the other day I saw a system that was developed in Europe that inkjets right on the bottle, right on the plastic or glass bottle. You know, when that happens, why do you need a label? You won't need a label. So where people see phenomenal opportunity right now, I always look over the horizon and say, what technology will come along and disrupt that? What technology will come along and change that equation? The next one is the HP Inkjet Press. Now let's see if I remember this. High definition nozzle architecture. All right, I'm not thrilled with the name, but I understand the point. The heads, in inkjet printing, the heads are the key to everything. Without the heads, you don't have a machine. So what they've done is they've increased the velocity, quality, capability, reliability of the heads for the roll-fed, high-speed inkjet presses from HP. These are the presses that go from 20 inches or so to 30-odd inches to 40-odd inches wide as a roll. They print on both sides of the roll and come out the other side with full color, two-sided printing. It's being used for what I call longer short runs. Many companies in the short run printing business have gotten into it so that they can handle runs of, let's say, 200 or 300 rather than 1 to 20 or 20 to 50. That press has done a phenomenal job around the world. And many companies who bought one now have 3 or 4 of them, because the volume has grown so much. The Komori IS-29, they have a real way with names. That's different from the i300. The IS-29 is also a sheet-fed machine. It's a 4-up device that Komori developed with Konica, so it uses Konica heads. Konica heads are used for many other devices out there, and Konica does a great job. And so they partnered with Komori. Komori has partnered with just about everybody to build devices. And then the last one on my list is the Rico roll-fed inkjet machine. Now, again, if you go back, Dai Nippon Screen developed the first version of it, but Rico then modified it with their own heads and their own architecture. So there are similarities, but they're different machines, and they both do a great job. And of course, Rico then has all the software for workflow. Well, Screen does too. So they have done a great job with roll-fed inkjet. And between Rico and Screen, considering that they're both very similar machines, it's the largest population of machines out there in the world at this stage of the game using roll-fed inkjet architecture. So how do you grow a business? Well, you either sell more of your present products to your present customers, you sell more of your present products to new customers, or you sell new products to anyone. Now, unless you figure out a way to use your existing technology, selling more of what you're doing to your present customers may not be easy. So you've got to figure out a way to either get new customers, that's competition of course, or come up with technologies and capabilities that allow you to sell new products to anyone. Now once you can do that, you can open up new markets. Now what happens with new markets then is once you open those new markets up, you have the ability to go back and sell them more of your present products. I mean, people who got into digital printing, what they discovered was they could sell more offset printing because they found new customers, built up relationships, and those relationships became more lucrative because then you could do more business with those new customers. So that's why I say, look at new technology, because that's where you can make money. Now, I know this is dangerous, because some new technologies bomb out. They don't make it. And you've got to be very careful about what you're buying and from whom you're buying it. So you have to buy from reputable companies with good service and support. One of the things I always do is, if you buy anything, you want to talk to present users. You want a list of users that you can actually call and visit. You want to take files to places where you can print out on their machines to see how they work. You want to talk about how service and support are done and what it costs and what kind of maintenance issues there are. You want to understand how that gets done. The salesman, of course, will do a wonderful job on how that machine will save you money and do all kinds of great things. But you want to know what happens after the machine is installed and everyone leaves the building and you're left alone to make that thing run and make money for you. So what are the new products you can sell? What are the new things you can do that you couldn't do before with traditional technology? Well, personalized direct mail. You can do that in one of two ways. You can do that by printing your shells on your offset press and then running it through a digital machine, or one of the newest approaches is to integrate the inkjet heads onto your offset press, and that's called hybrid printing. And I know there's one of the people on the call today is from Japs Olson, and Japs Olson has been one of the pioneers in integrating hybrid printing into their systems for doing direct marketing material. I think you're going to see more hybrid printing. Inkjet, because Inkjet has the speed, toner does not. Inkjet applied to traditional printing presses, even as it's been applied to flexography presses. Anything involving packaging, starting with labels, knowing that labels over the next decades will have changes. Labels will still be a growth market for a while. So long as people want to buy water in bottles, we're okay. And then the one I think is the most valuable is security printing. There's just so many forgeries and counterfeits out there of pharmaceutical packaging, passports. It's just amazing what's going on right now. There was a whole news segment last night on people in the Middle East forging passports and ID cards to get into Europe. And in many cases, they're getting it, no one is really checking them very carefully. That's why the American passport and many other passports now have chips in them and other electronic methods. But we're printing them with multiple printing processes, with all kinds of new approaches. For some kinds of packaging, we're actually putting DNA in the ink or other kinds of taggants so we can read them with a special reader. I think security printing is going to be the next big thing. Value-added print, anything that adds value to a printed piece. So embossing, foil stamping, die cutting, coating of any kind. I judge more printing competitions than anyone else I know. And if you go to them, they're all done by printers who are high quality. I've never met a low quality printer. Never walked up to the door that said mediocre quality over the door. Doesn't work that way. The thing that makes them win is the piece stands out from all the other pieces. That's the key to everything. If you can make that piece look valuable through all of these effects, then it gets attention. And once it gets attention, it helps you sell something. And remember, that's a lot of what print is all about, selling something to somebody else. And then lastly, wide format inkjet. I would say one of the things that has saved the printing industry in the last decade has been wide format inkjet doing signage. Did you know that exit signs, signs with the word exit, are a $23 million market in and of themselves? 4 letters on a piece of metal or plastic or paper is a gigantic market in and of itself. This allowed printers, wide format inkjet allowed printers to get into the marketplace, find new business by doing something they never did. They did not do signage. They did not do backdrops. Look at all the signage we're using everywhere. that, they adhere to glass and plastic and film. They're on buses and cars. We wrap vehicles with them. As printers moved into wide format inkjet, what happened next was they were able to sell new stuff to existing customers. They were able to sell new stuff to new customers and then build relationships and sell old stuff to everybody. This is how they stayed in business. And so if you go into most commercial printers today, wide format inkjet is a mainstay in what they do. That's the key. So I believe that if you're going to move into the future, wide format inkjet. Now, let's go beyond signage. Flatbed inkjet. Flatbed. The ability to print on thick materials, very large, thick materials, including polyfoam, wood, glass, plastic, metal, carpeting, ceiling tile, anything that you can imagine, I can print with UV inkjet. This is what has propelled EFI and HP and other companies into the stratosphere. The ability to print all kinds of new materials, home decor materials, textiles, industrial printing, major forms of design and art can be reproduced. This, to me, is the key to everything. Taking a technology and applying it where you can create new products.
Frank, you have a question. Speaking on new products and new technologies, the question is, you didn't mention the Kodak Prosper inkjet as new technology. Kodak has a small corner display at Graph Expo. Is there any reason you might not consider it new because it's using the current Versamark head technology?
No, it's not that's not the Versamark head technology. That's, of course, Prosper technology, which is fantastic. The Prosper is a great machine. It had been introduced. They did an upgrade to it, and I'm sorry I didn't cover it in any detail. But, yes, it should be mentioned. And, by the way, the Versamark still sell. They're very strong in transaction printing and direct marketing as well. But I think they need to get the Prosper down in price and size because it's just overkill right now. It's a gigantic machine. It's the size of a railroad train when you get right down to it. So you need roller skates to get from one end to the other. The advantage of it is high quality at high speed because it's continuous inkjet. It's one of the few systems out there that's continuous inkjet. All the others, most of the others, are drop on demand. So Kodak, when they started with it, they had a lead. But now other companies are starting to catch up, and the roll-fed inkjet marketplace is getting inundated with new technology. With Kodak, what I've always discovered is they tend to go to the very high end of the marketplace. But that's not where the money is to me. I think the money is always somewhere below the middle. And if you can establish the base in the middle, then you can sell a high-end machine. And that's what many of the other companies are doing right now. They've established a base below that, and they're building up at this stage of the game. So Kodak has its work cut out for them. They've got the technology. Now they just need the products. So what I call new print. Printed electronics is a good example. Batteries, circuitry, screens. We're using, by the way, screen printing and Flexo to print with photoconductive inks on special surfaces that can conduct an electrical charge. That's opening up all kinds of new opportunities out there. Flatbed inkjet printing, as I described, printing on plastics, textiles, glass, metal, wood, carpet, tile. 3D printing, oh my God, prototypes, medical, engineering, toys, busts, statues. Every day I read about something new being done with 3D printing. Functional or industrial printing. By the way, that's an area where Kodak is a real pioneer. They've got phenomenal technology for touch screens and other functional printing products. If they can move that technology forward fast enough, that might be the mainstay for Kodak as we move into the future. These are all new areas. I call them new print. Why do I call them new print? Well, you had media, and then when the internet came along, it was new media. And we had print. And now we have a new world that's forming here that's not traditional. So it's new print. So that's the way I'm distinguishing this new world that's evolving. Now think about combining some of these areas, doing printed electronics with a flatbed inkjet system to print functional printing materials. think about how that can all be combined. Imagine adding texture to that piece as well and making it 3D for cartography. Imagine you open up a map and it's 3D. These are phenomenal new opportunities that are evolving. So as I look into the future, what I see then is that 2014, traditional print is the big blue one there, and new print is the very low one. As we move to 2020, now we start to see new print grow in volume. That printers will be deriving more of their income from these new areas than from the previous areas that we have been making money with. Now, if you remember, I started out talking about cell phones and Radio Shack, and I did that to show you how the world can change very quickly. Everything in a Radio Shack ad that added up to a few $1,000s, I can do on my iPhone. And that kids today are using electronics to communicate and multitasking. The world changes very quickly. So if you say, Frank, I can put off all this new print stuff for a while because, you know, there's time. Well, sometimes it can work against you. So if I was going to do anything as a result of this call, if you're a commercial printing company, I would go out and start looking at flatbed inkjet printers. That would be my #1 assignment. Go to some trade shows, collect literature, check websites, learn what you can so you're conversant with the technology, and you can get to the point of, at some juncture in the future, making an intelligent decision in terms of where you're going to go with your business and with your future. So that's my material. Oh, I do have a summary. Sorry about that. But I think I've summarized it, but let's kind of go through it again just to be safe. The future is digital with some offset. Offset doesn't die. In fact, no printing process will ever die. Many of the new systems that we're looking at today are still evolving. That's why you have to be very careful. Dry toner dominates with sheet-fed printing devices. Inkjet and liquid toner dominate with roll-fed, and that will continue. Although liquid toner now, with the Landa machines coming through, we'll see them at Drupa, and other devices will change a lot. Inkjet dominates in flatbed printing. I can't imagine doing it any other way. Packaging is a growing market, but be very careful. It's not for everyone. And of course, relentless change will continue. There will be no end to it as we progress. So, Ron, do we have any questions?
So far, no questions. If you do have any questions, you can enter those in the chat box. If you can't see the chat window, you can click the chat button on the upper right hand of your WebEx window.
Or just say hello.
So we'll just give it 1 minute, see if we have any other additional questions. Thank you, Frank, for sharing the valuable information. Certainly makes us think about where the printing industry is going in the future.
Oh, there are no questions. This is great. I've answered every question.
So we've just got a comment from Lee saying hi and thanks to Frank.
Oh, hey, Lee.
Somebody's asking, what's the future of toner presses?
Okay, that's a great question. Toner, again, nothing will ever die. So what we're going to find is for very short runs at the low end of the marketplace, low end not meaning low quality, but meaning short, very short runs, toner will still be applicable. And so I see toner being around for a long, long time. Again, you're going to wind up with a multiplicity of machines in the plant, and the machines will be then dedicated to doing specific jobs based upon volume, quality, capability, etc. So toner is going to be a very important part of our future.
There's a question, is there any technology that could be viable to replace Flexo for direct print corrugated packaging?
There's lots going on with that area right now. There are some really gigantic presses out there for printing corrugated, but the quality is really sucky. It's going to get better. Everything gets better over time, and I've been watching that area very carefully, but it hasn't progressed as fast as I thought it would be. The machines are very pricey, and for some people in the corrugated market, that quality level is not that important. But I think we're going to see a shift that people are going to want that corrugated stuff to be phenomenal. So that's why we're still printing on liners and then affixing it to the base. And that's why We're seeing KBA partner, in fact, they're partnering with Donnelly to create a machine for doing that, as well as other manufacturers that are out there. But I still have a wait-and-see attitude about that market.
Another question, is there a possibility of combining toner and inkjet for more value? Is there any research going on in that area?
Yes, yes. It's kind of funny to think about it that way. Why would you have two different printing technologies? Well, hybrid printing is offset and inkjet, so that mixes. Why wouldn't you have the other two? Well, it could be that you could find niche marketplaces where you want that. But for now, both technologies are doing almost the same things in different ways, and I don't really see integrating them. And the research I've seen where they've tried to integrate them hasn't really come up with any answers.
Okay. Digital web paper availability and pricing is challenging. Are the manufacturers working with and driving the mills, or waiting for the mills to improve inkjet receptivity, especially on gloss paper?
Okay. This is a great question because it really gets me up in arms. The poor paper companies, well, they're not poor, they're really in a bind because every manufacturer of digital machines makes their sheet size different. There's absolutely no consistency in the sheet size from any two digital machines, inkjet or toner, although the toner side is a little bit more standardized with, A4, 8.5 by 11, 11/17, 12/18, etc. The problem is then, and every paper requires, every substrate requires some kind of special coating or mixture or something different about it. So the paper companies have to maintain an inventory of a gazillion SKUs. This is not fair to the paper companies. So they have to kind of decide, which machine do I go with? Which paper do I go with? Which manufacturer do I go with? That's the issue. So that's why there's a gigantic push right now to develop systems, printing systems, that essentially can use plain paper. In other words, standard mill paper. So I kind of side with the mills at this stage of the game. They're betwixt and between. They don't know what the market wants. The people who make the machines don't quite know what the market wants. And now the paper companies have to supply paper for something you bought that they can't see a big market for. And they wind up setting up a line to make that paper and it doesn't sell anywhere along. So that's going to be the issue. And again, I understand the frustration here, and that's because there are so many different sizes and requirements for digital papers.
Great. Thanks, Frank. That's all the time we have for today. Additional questions can be emailed to ritalum@rit.edu or tweeted to @RIT_alumni with the hashtag #MeRITWebinars, and we'll direct your questions to Frank. Note that all participants will receive an email from us within the next week with a link to today's webinar recording. Many thanks to you, Frank. We thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. Join us for the next webinar, Taxation and Charitable Giving, on November 11th, which will be presented by Craig Smith. Thanks again for joining us.